Hi guys, I hope you're doing really well. My name is Sarah and welcome to What the Horror, the channel where we talk about horror movies old and new. Let's take a step into one of horror's subgenres, where handheld cameras, haunting footage, and unscripted tales come together to create a unique narrative experience. In today's episode, we delve into the intriguing evolution of found footage filmmaking, from its origins as a subversive storytelling technique to its widespread adoption in the horror genre and beyond. Come along as we navigate the intricate paths of this cinematic evolution, exploring both its foundational classics and modern innovations, uncovering how found footage has profoundly influenced the way we engage with stories on the silver screen. The found footage genre is a filmmaking style that presents a narrative as if it consists of discovered or recovered film or video recordings, typically shot by a character or characters within the story. This subgenre creates a sense of realism and immediacy in a way no other subgenre does, by portraying events from a first-person perspective, most commonly using shaky camera work and amateurish filming techniques. It allows or even forces the audience to witness the events as if they are witnessing it as they happen, which can create a heightened sense of suspense, unease, and terror. The roots of found footage can actually be found in literature, in particular in the format of the epistolary novel, a narrative that is structured as a series of documents, often letters, diary entries, newspaper clippings, or other written communications. Perhaps two of the most famous epistolary novels are Bram Stoker's Dracula and Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. This series of documents are collected or found after the fact, after the event, just like the majority of footage in found footage films. Another piece of media highly influential on the evolution of found footage was the radio broadcast of Orson Welles' adaptation of H.G. Wells' novel War of the Worlds back in 1938. The show was broadcast in October 1938, complete with cast and Orson Welles as narrator. The show played out as a normal radio show, complete with weather reports and classical music pieces being played, before the show would be interrupted by realistic news reports. Over the course of the runtime, the news flashes would tell of meteorites landing and a Martian invasion. The reason this broadcast is famous is because of its convincing format and the absence of clear disclaimers. Many listeners actually believed the news reports were genuine, and it led to confusion and widespread panic. Similar to the way found footage films use recorded visuals, a letter, news report, or radio show can serve as apparent proof of an event. They can create a false reality. As Alexandra Nicholas, author of found footage horror films Fear and the Appearance of Reality, says, quote, "It's presenting a fictional story in the form of something that is usually aligned with truth tellings or news tellings, and by doing so, destabilize what is true and how susceptible we are to believing these fantastical stories." Unquote. Within the subgenre itself, there are different types of found footage films. You have horror found footage, which is perhaps the most well known, which usually includes documentation of supernatural or terrifying events, for example in the Blair Witch Project or Paranormal Activity. Mockumentaries, films that use a documentary style approach to tell a fictional story, for example Ghostwatch. Science fiction found footage, for example films like Apollo 18 and Cloverfield. Anthology found footage, which is multiple found footage narratives and short stories, for example in the VHS franchise. And real-time found footage, which are films that unfold in real time, enhancing the immediacy and tension for the audience, for example films such as Wreck and its American remake Quarantine. There are also differences in creative choices. For example, studio films with a bigger budget like Cloverfield often use the handheld camera and recorded footage style simply as a different way to tell their story, while smaller films like Paranormal Activity and Creep use the found footage aspect to create more tension and make the story more believable, to allow the audience to feel what they're watching is real. But on occasion, you also find films where the found footage is only in certain aspects of the film. Two of the main challenges creators of found footage films face are: number one, creating a valid reason for the camera to be out and used in the first place. And then number 2, a valid reason for the camera to remain out and filming. Alexandra Helen Nicholas rightly points out that as the found footage subgenre has been around a while now, it has become almost comic. This running gag of why are they still filming? Turn the camera off and get out of there. And it's not just the audience screaming this at the screen anymore. We now even have characters within the film itself asking, why are you still filming? Patrick Bryce, director and writer of Creep from 2014, says that while filming Creep, he was aware of every shot, that it had to make sense that that character would have filmed that. Another difficulty creators of found footage films face is that there is a responsibility or expectancy on found footage to allow the audience to buy into them. And this can be restricting when the number of story scenarios that allow this is quite small, and the introduction of or use of digital special effects can also reduce the plausibility of the story that you're telling. Director Rob Savage also says that the use of known actors and recognizable faces can destroy the reality of the movie. He says there are more expectations on your film from the audience than if you were making a conventionally filmed movie. However, the challenges aside, there are also benefits to making this subgenre of film. Again, quoting Alexandra Helen Nicholas, she describes it as, quote, "There is an economic democracy to found footage film. You don't need to be working with a big studio or have a huge budget," unquote. And that opens up opportunities and potential for people to make films who are usually excluded from filmmaking. Found footage films have often found themselves at the root of certain controversies, from Cannibal Holocaust to the Blair Witch Project and the more recent Dashcam. Like all horror, the found footage subgenre tends to push the boundaries, and each film isn't going to be for everyone. For example, like Orson Welles' War of the World before it, Cannibal Holocaust caused controversy as it was believed that the footage in the film was real, and that director Ruggero Deodato had killed his actors. He eventually had to face murder charges and prove in court in Milan that the actors were still alive. Once he did, all charges were dropped. What had aggravated this situation is that the actors had signed contracts saying they wouldn't film anything else for a year, adding to the illusion of the film. Alexandra Helen Nicholas says, quote, "It's not surprising that there are controversies about these films, because it challenges our transgressors, the idea that found footage is a game, is this real or isn't it, and that you can either celebrate them as being quite radical or perhaps on the other hand, as being quite exploitative. The bottom line is, this is not dealing in the realm of fantasy. We're often watching very real things that happen in the real world, and it makes a distressing viewing regardless of how you view the film," unquote. Peeping Tom from 1960 is often considered to be highly influential on the evolution of found footage films. Peeping Tom is a British psychological horror thriller and follows Mark Lewis as he murders women and films it, hoping to capture the look of fear in their eyes. It was one of the first films that involved the camera in what was happening and introduced the concept of the camera as a weapon or source of terror. With its exploration of gaze and voyeurism, it also created that link and relationship between the character and the audience, putting you, the audience, in the shoes of the character, and in this case, in the shoes of the killer. While Peeping Tom didn't directly inspire the found footage styles, its themes of using a camera to document terrifying events and the impact of that on both characters and audience can be seen as influencing later works. Cannibal Holocaust is considered to be by many another important film in the development of the found footage subgenre. While found footage still wasn't a recognizable or labeled genre, the film was essentially discovered footage containing horrifying events. So again, like Peeping Tom, we can see the later recognizable elements coming through. Like the War of the Worlds broadcast before it, this was another attempt at convincing the audience that what they were seeing was real. Only this time, for the first time, it was on film. Inspired by the daily violent footage of war coverage on the news, the idea for the film came about when director Ruggero Deodato's 7-year-old son asked him to turn off the news because all you you could see was blood and violence. According to Deodato, he realised that journalists got to go, do and report whatever they want, while filmmakers, on the other hand, are restricted and heavily censored. So he came up with the idea, quote, of journalists that go in search of a scoop, and when they don't find it, they create them, unquote. And again, the camera is involved in what is happening and is used in a way to tell the story. In 1989, Dean Alioto wrote, produced and directed his first film, UFO Abduction. While the film received some criticism for its sound quality and visual effects, there are some that class this as the first found footage film. Due to financial issues and a restricted budget of $6,500, Alioto decided to make his film as a home video using low-cost cameras and tapes. The film documented a Connecticut family gathered for a birthday that end up experiencing the arrival of extraterrestrials. As Alexandra Helen Nicholas says, there is something instantly recognizable about a home video. We've all either made one or seen one. Quote, this familiarity can create a feeling of safety and allow us to connect to the domestic setting and situation. And when you use a home video to convey horror, it creates a very tangible and significant type of tension, unquote. According to Leslie Manning, director of Ghostwatch from 1992, found footage will always work as long as it changes with the times and reflects the zeitgeist and contemporary technology. Similar to many horror subgenres, found footage has evolved over time, mirroring and adapting to the cultural context of its era. Two perfect examples of this are two found footage entries from the 1990s, Ghostwatch from 1992 and The Last Broadcast from 1998. Ghostwatch is a British mockumentary that was broadcast on the BBC on Halloween night 1992. It was a pre-recorded film, but done so in the style of a live TV show. It followed 4 presenters and a camera crew attempt to discover the truth behind the most haunted house in Britain. As the film went on, the presenters and crew were exposed to images of the supernatural. Ghostwatch was intended to ask the audience to question what it was seeing on the screen, and as it was made in the style of contemporary real TV shows, it held a mirror up to them and encouraged audiences to question them as well, both the visuals and the experts. The Last Broadcast is an American horror film that follows a man filming a documentary about 4 men who went looking for the Jersey Devil, with only one of them surviving. As with Ghostwatch, they were commenting on the media and what is shown to us, the idea of fact and fiction, and there is a difference in reality and manufactured truths. Director of The Last Broadcast, Lance Whaler, describes the film as being about, quote, media that is shaped, the media we digest, and how we shape our own truth, unquote. Following in the footsteps of previous found footage films, The Blair Witch Project was another film to be made as a mockumentary or a horror found footage that follows characters gather footage for a documentary. As with the success of other subgenres in the late 90s, The Blair Witch Project came at a time that was oversaturated with glossy, highly produced slashers, and the nihilistic feeling of the film and low-budget style provided audiences with something new. While the film owed some of its success to word of mouth, what really helped The Blair Witch become a success was the choices in marketing that the creators made. The film came out in 1999, a time when not everyone had access to the internet, and even if they did, there wasn't the information that there is now. Creators Eduardo Sanchez and Danielle Merrick created a website which cost $15 a month to host to accompany the release of the film. They added the mythology of the witch, clips of footage, and claims that Heather, Josh, and Mike were still missing. Reminiscent again of War of the Worlds decades earlier, audiences were once again led to believe and were susceptible to believing the footage they were seeing was real. For Blair Witch, it was a case of being released in the right place at the right time. This type of marketing just wouldn't work in the modern day, because one search on the internet would prove that these were just actors. But despite its huge success, an issue Blair Witch had was that it was also released at a time of parody films such as Scary Movie. So yes, while Blair Witch did give audiences something new, It was also killed off almost instantly by being overly parodied. The next big change for found footage would come in the form of YouTube and social media, because now everyone was filming each other. We now all had a camera at our fingertips in the form of our mobile phones. It became the norm to watch footage that was in the POV of the camera and of a grainy quality. We were used to seeing shocking and strange content as we began sharing links to videos and clips with each other through emails and messages. Alexandra Heller Nicholas says that rather than cycles in popularity, you can see found footage as spikes and dips as technology changes and advances. Every time there's a new technology, there's a new wave of found footage films. 2007 saw a resurge of successful found footage films, one of those being the Spanish horror Rec. The creators apparently wanted to increase the horror in the movie and to make audiences more involved in the experience. Heavily inspired by cop TV shows, they decided to use this style rather than recorded tapes or footage that was later found. The director describes it as being more like a live TV show that puts the audience in the eye of the camera lens of the camera and lets the audience be part of the story. When coming up with the concept for Paranormal Activity, director Oren Peli was influenced by previous found footage films such as Ghostwatch and the Blair Witch Project. But Peli had no filmmaking background, but wanting to make one, he used the found footage subgenre and took advantage of the new high-definition cameras to create his film. Filmed at Peli's house with no camera crew and no real script allowed for a, quote, higher degree of plausibility, unquote. As the camera was nearly always stationary on a tripod or something else, there was no real need for a camera crew, and the actors Katie and Mika were only given a story outline, allowing them to improvise a lot of their lines, which led to the dialogue feeling far more natural. In Paranormal Activity, we once again return to that familiar domestic setting and home video style, and the repetition of the bedroom and hallway scene creates a sense of anticipation as the audience becomes attuned to the environment, waiting for something to happen. The familiarity of the setting heightens the tension as the audience becomes increasingly aware of and anxious about potential supernatural activity. During the 2010s, after the surge of and success of found footage films such as Rec, Paranormal Activity, Lake Mungo, Cloverfield, and Rec's American remake Quarantine, we saw other subgenres blend found footage into theirs. We had The Last Exorcism in 2010 trying to add something new to the possession subgenre, Apollo 18 blending space horror with found footage, and Megan is Missing, a highly disturbing film that crosses the line into video nasty. As the found footage films of the 70s and 80s were affected by the news and films of the 90s were influenced by media and the internet, it seems fitting and perhaps expected that the next stage in found footage would be social media. While social media led to events in Megan is Missing and Korea's Gonjiam Haunted Asylum, where a crew is filming for a web-based series, it would be films such as Unfriended and Host that really began to utilize it in their storytelling. Both films using footage from a laptop desktop and apps using webcams and phone cameras. Like home video found footage films before them, the use of identifiable apps and social platforms such as Zoom gave the audience a level of instant familiarity. In particular, in Host, which was released in 2020, which follows a group of friends hosting a seance on a Zoom call, because during lockdown most people were themselves using Zoom or other apps like it to speak to the people that they couldn't see in person. That familiarity and recreation of a scenario many of us were in brought that same intense and distinct level of tension that home video found footage films had created before. And of course, another recent film, Spree from 2020, then extended the use of social media to include using footage from live streaming. As technology advances, filmmakers have a plethora of tools at their disposal to capture footage, ranging from traditional cameras and security cameras to drones and mobile phones. However, as technology progresses, so do the apps designed to edit and manipulate footage. This poses a challenge for filmmakers aiming to create found footage films that remain convincing to audiences, particularly in an era where fake clips, news, and manipulated recordings are prevalent online. While films like Ghostwatch and The Last Broadcast prompted viewers to question media representations back in the 90s, this skepticism has now become commonplace. Today, individuals constantly navigate the fine line between discerning reality and grappling with the pervasive presence of manufactured truths. This subgenre offers immense freedom and opportunities, eliminating the necessity for a recognised cast, a substantial budget, or anything beyond a compelling story outline. It provides filmmakers with an entry point into the industry that might not be as readily available in mainstream studio films. As found footage continually adapts to and evolves with the emerging technologies and contemporary commentary consistently pushing boundaries, there persists a genuine enthusiasm and want for the subgenre. It will be interesting to see where found footage evolves to next. If you're new here, then don't forget to subscribe, as I will be releasing a list of the best found footage films to watch, and I will also be doing episodes covering the evolution of other subgenres of horror in the future, along with my back catalogue of content already available on the channel. And if you would like to join this list of names here and have access to extra content once a week, or just to support the channel, then I will leave a link to my Patreon page in the description box below. But in the meantime, thank you as always for stopping by. I really do appreciate it. Take care of yourselves, and I will talk to you in the next episode. Bye.